Do you remember when leaving the house meant disappearing? No location sharing. No text me when you get there. No glowing blue dot moving across a map. You left, and for a few hours, you were simply gone. If you were born somewhere between the late 70s and mid-80s, you grew up in a world that no longer exists, and then had to build an adult life in one that arrived almost overnight. You're not fully Gen X, formed entirely in analog independence. You're not purely millennial either, raised inside the architecture of the internet. You came of age in the seam between them, and living inside a seam shapes you. Identity usually grows from belonging, a generation, a cultural rhythm, a shared language you can point to and say, "That's mine." But you were always slightly out of sync. Too young for the hardened detachment of Gen X. Too analog for the effortless digital fluency of millennials. So you learned something subtle: how to adapt without fully identifying. How to move between worlds without claiming either one. You remember rewinding cassette tapes with a pencil. You remember the thrill of creating your first email address. Both memories belong to you equally. That dual memory of before and after changes how you see change itself. You didn't miss the future. You didn't lose the past. You were born at the hinge of history. Before algorithms learned your preferences, boredom was something you had to survive. There were long afternoons with nothing scheduled, nothing streaming, nothing glowing in your hand, no instant entertainment dissolving silence. Boredom wasn't a problem. It was default. So you invented. Sidewalks became racetracks. Empty rooms became worlds. You learned how to generate experience from imagination alone. Psychologists today would call that activation of the brain's default mode network, the system that fuels creativity and reflection. For you, it was just childhood. You also learned to wait, for film to be developed, for your favorite song to come on the radio, for a friend to show up at the agreed time. Once you left the house, you were unreachable. Waiting wasn't frustrating. It was normal. And in that waiting, something formed. Delayed gratification, tolerance for uncertainty, the understanding that not everything arrives on demand. Your social world was physical and immediate. Conflict happened face to face. Tone mattered. Silence mattered. Body language carried meaning long before text flattened nuance into punctuation. You learned to read a room before you ever read a thread. You learned repair after friction, not escape after discomfort. And then there was solitude, not loneliness, just being alone with your thoughts. No notifications punctured the quiet. No infinite scroll replaced reflection. Your mind had space to echo. That childhood, nearly extinct now, left you with something rare. The ability to tolerate stillness without panic, to imagine without input, to exist briefly, unentertained, and unobserved. Then, just as you were becoming yourself, the world shifted. Not slowly, not across generations, right in the middle of adolescence, when identity is still soft and forming. 1 year, connection meant a phone tethered to a wall. A few years later, it meant a glowing portal in the corner of your room, introduced by the high-pitched song of a dial-up modem. You were old enough to remember before, young enough to master after. That created something psychologically rare: technological bilingualism. You learned analog presence, eye contact, pauses, shared physical space. Then you learned digital mediation, usernames, typed tone, curated identities, connection without proximity. For you, the internet was never air. It was a place. You logged on, and you logged off. There was a boundary, an architectural separation between physical life and digital life. School existed in one world, chat rooms in another. Crossing between them felt intentional. But as adulthood unfolded, the boundary dissolved. The place you used to visit became the environment you lived inside. If this moved you, comment 9 right now. If it didn't, comment 0. Your voice matters. Take 1 second and share it. Work moved online. Friendship moved online. Memory moved online, and somewhere along the way, the log-off door disappeared. You still carry the memory of when it existed, a time when connection had edges. Growing up during that transition didn't just teach you tools, it rewired your sense of where life happens. Identity usually grows from belonging, but as a Xennial, that belonging often felt slightly blurred. You were labeled Gen X, yet you didn't fully share their purely analog formation. Later, you were grouped with Millennials, yet you never felt native inside a world that began already connected. So you became a translator. You moved between generational spaces without fully settling into either. Psychologically, that creates a hybrid identity, not fragmented, not lost, unclassified. You understand pre-internet skepticism. You understand digital fluidity, but recognition is not the same as belonging. Over time, that produces a quiet internal narrative. I adapt everywhere, but I originate nowhere. There is strength in that position. Cognitive flexibility, empathy across difference, comfort with transition. But there is also cost, a softer anchor of identity, fewer cultural mirrors. So you built continuity internally, holding incompatible eras inside a single self. You are what transition looks like when it becomes human. Your childhood unfolded in the bright optimism of the 1990s, a decade that felt stable. The Cold War had ended. The economy expanded. Technology promised progress, not disruption. The message was simple: study hard. Go to college. The future will be wider and safer than the past. You believed it. Children are meant to believe the world will hold. But as you stepped into adulthood, the timing fractured. The dot-com bubble burst as many of you entered college or the workforce. Then September 11th struck, not midlife, but launch. The age of first jobs, first apartments, first plans. The psychological message was immediate. The world can change overnight. Just as stability seemed possible, the 2008 financial crisis arrived, precisely when traditional milestones approached. Again, the ground shifted. These stacked disruptions created what might be called cynical optimism. You still believe effort matters, but beneath that belief runs awareness. Systems fail. Timing betrays. Security is temporary. When you were young, communication had edges. Work stayed at work. Home stayed home. Connection happened in intervals, not continuously. Now adulthood exists in an always-on field. Email follows you. Messages arrive at midnight. The day has no clean perimeter. For you, constant connectivity never felt natural. It felt like something that arrived after identity formed. Part of your nervous system still expects pauses, offline stretches, unreachable hours. But the modern world rarely grants them. So you carry a low-grade cognitive tension, the memory of bounded communication inside perpetual reachability. When you look at your child's world, you see something structurally different. Friendships extend through devices. Mistakes persist digitally. Childhood is partially public. You want to give them what you had: boredom, privacy, offline space. But you know the environment has changed. To remove them from digital life isolates them. To immerse them fully exposes them. So you parent across worlds. You translate dangers your parents never had to explain. Algorithms, permanence, strangers without faces. And beneath that balancing act lives quiet grief. Not for your childhood, but for the knowledge that its conditions cannot be recreated intact for them. At work, you stand between generations. You understand hierarchy. You understand speed. You explain to older leaders why attention cannot be commanded indefinitely in a hyper-connected culture. You explain to younger coworkers why trust forms over time. Psychologists call this cognitive flexibility. For you, it was environmental adaptation. You became connective tissue. Bridges rarely receive applause. They simply carry movement. By midlife, responsibilities converge. Aging parents above, children below. Career disruptions still echoing from earlier crises. Psychologists call it role strain, multiple high-demand roles with limited recovery. Support often flows through you more than toward you. Fatigue accumulates not only from tasks, but from position. The structural middle. You carry memory and anticipation at once, and yet you hold something increasingly rare. A lived memory of human pace before constant connection. You remember days unfolding without interruption, thoughts forming unshared, friendships deepening without documentation. Your memories are more than nostalgia. They are cultural memory, evidence that attention once had margins, that identity could form without audience or archive. You are not stuck between eras. You are the bridge between them. And in a world that forgets what it used to cross, bridges matter most. You were shaped by a world that had edges, where silence existed, where waiting was normal, where identity formed without an audience. And then you learn to survive inside a world that never turns off. That dual memory isn't confusion. It's perspective. You carry proof that life once had margins, that connection once required presence, that being unreachable was ordinary. That matters more than you think. If this reflection resonated with you, take a moment to like this video. Share it with someone who remembers logging off and meaning it. And subscribe for more deep explorations into the psychology of generations navigating a world that keeps accelerating.